We've moved on to part 2 now of bone tissue, and the functional nature of bones and what that's about. So we're on page 178 of chapter 6, and we're taking a look here at a, how shall I say, a representative long bone, a little artistic rendition here of something of the long bone persuasion. Okay, and so we have certain features that are unique here. We have the shaft in the middle region that's referred to by the term diaphysis. We have the ends of the long bone that are referred to as the epiphysis. Okay, remember that we have the directional terminology of proximal and distal. So where it's closest to the body, that aspect of the bone closest to the body or the origin of the limb bud is going to be the proximal end, or the proximal, in this case, epiphysis. Down here we're going to have the distal epiphysis. Okay, here we have a fully formed bone. You'll notice that some aspects of the bone are compact and quite substantial. And there are also, there's an arrangement here of continuous, how shall I say, connective tissue. Whereas in through here we have something that we sometimes call spongy bone or cancellous bone. They're calling it spongy here. And also along the edges here, you'll notice where we have joint formation, we're going to have what's called articular cartilage. The articular cartilage, generally speaking, in the movable joints is going to be hyaline cartilage. It's a smooth, glassy cartilage, and things can move against it very smoothly. So we have the proximal epiphysis, we have the diaphysis. Sometimes we identify the region in between as the metaphysis. That can be done if you like. Here we have an epiphyseal line where there used to be a disc. This was a growth region here for lengthening of the bone, and the disc would move in the upward direction this way. The bone would lengthen, and new bone would form next to the cartilaginous disc. Okay, and it would become what we call mineralized. Eventually, the discs close, they say, in a line or plate, and that's the end of growth for that individual. Okay, here also we have a type of marrow that's unique to this part of the bone, the epiphysis, where the spongy bone is, and we call that red marrow. Red marrow has the stem cells for blood synthesis, so the origins of all of the blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, everything, the original stem cells are all here in the red marrow. Down here in the this region, in the what they call the medullary cavity, inside the diaphysis, we have a space that's filled with mostly fat. It's loose connective tissue invaded by fat, and it's particularly famous for immune surveillance. Remember, we had a little workup on immune surveillance before, where we noticed that macrophages were eating anything of the pathogenic persuasion, not self, and presenting it to T cells and B cells to produce immunoglobulins and T cytotoxic cells, which are part of the immune system. Okay, we have this thing right here that's referred to as a nutrient vessel. As you look carefully at real bones, real human bones, you'll notice that there are these sort of anomalous, random little openings in the sides of the bone. And that just happens to be where in that individual during development the blood vessels were present and formed and maintained as the bone matrix grew around the blood vessels. Okay, so this is a nutrient vessel which feeds the inside of the bone. They're having a little chunk here of the epiphysis, the spongy bone, brought out over here so that we can examine it more closely. You'll see that there's compact bone out here on the edge. I'm sorry, this is a connective tissue. This is the periosteum. Okay, it's or it could be articular cartilage, which because it's over near the end, that could be the case. Okay, so that at any rate, here's the compact bone, and it is, as you can see, perfused with blood vessels. And then we also have blood vessels running through all of the spongy bone areas. Sometimes these little, how shall I say, struts here in this portion of the spongy bone are referred to as trabecula or spicules. Okay, so they bear that name. Also, this is filled with, how shall I say, serum fluid, and it's lined with simple squamous epithelial tissue. Simple squamous epithelial tissue, but we actually refer to it as endothelium. Okay, we give it a special name, and it's where red blood cells and white blood cells and blood in general can be found. Okay, so then over here we're blowing up the central region, and we're taking a look here at the compact bone, and we're noticing that there is a covering. It's referred to as the periosteum. Okay, this is a connective tissue covering that covers the outside of the bone. And notice that it's being held in place by what are called Sharpie's fibers, perforating fibers. Okay, so they've sort of pulled that down for you to take a look. Oftentimes, when there is injury to the bone, it doesn't necessarily have to be a fracture all the way through. It just could be possibly a partial fracture and injury to the periosteum, but it takes a long time to heal because you're basically healing bone matrix, and oftentimes it does bleed down, and so somebody will get a bump on their shin, and then there's a bruise on the top of the foot, and that's where the blood here has sort of seeped down and finally found a place to land and coagulate and form a bruise. Okay, so these bones here, this bone tissue right through here is very it goes through a lot of remodeling. So it's a 100-day process to fully remodel the bone matrix here. So you can expect to have complete healing of fractures, assuming that they can be reduced or what we call coapted. The pieces are put together properly so that everything is available. Okay, and then we'll move on from there to there's different shapes of bones and different nomenclatures that I need you to know about because we make this notification. So as we learn the bones, we're going to be learning things like that there's these spines, things that stick out. Okay, and then there's going to be a crest. Here's the iliac crest. It's the top of your hip upon which you rest your baby or your groceries. Okay. So there's different types of things like that. Tuberosity is a large rounded projection that sticks out. Usually it's where there's a muscle attached. A crest also might have muscles associated with it. It's a narrow ridge. A trochanter. A trochanter is on your hip, and it's the side of your hip right here, the greater trochanter. It's how you bump the door open when you have something in both hands and you can't put them down right away, and you have to bump the door open. That's your trochanter right there. It's also a place where a lot of muscles are attached, and we use that as a lever right there. Okay, and then as you come down, you'll find further things. There's a line. Over here, there's something called the linea aspera. Okay, a line that comes down this way, and there's going to be musculature attached to the line. If you feel on the back of your neck or just below the bottom of your neck, you'll feel things sticking out. That's a spinous process that's been sticking out. Okay. And let's see what else. We have an epicondyle. So an epicondyle, this would be your elbow right here. If you feel on either side of your elbow, there's a little bony projection that sticks out. And so there's one on the medial side, there's one on the lateral side, and again, muscles attach here and come down into the forearm. Okay, so these are very, they can be, how shall I say, palpated easily, and you can find them. Okay, then we have what's called a ramus here, for instance, and this is a branch. In the Latin language, a ramulus is a branch. Condyle is a manner in which we are able to make joints. with a rounded surface right here. Okay, then they're showing us the head of the rib here. There's little facets for where the rib fits into the vertebra. They're not showing us this groove, but there's grooves all along the way. Here's a groove here that they want us to take a look at. A groove in the skull. Okay, so you get the idea that it's all this nomenclature and it's the way that we're going to use language.